Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Zachary Coons and I am proud to be here on this Friday afternoon to conduct another interview with my grandfather, Dr. Patterson, who is also the founder of the foundation. Last time we talked, we covered a broader range of topics, including the first 2020 ETOC, how heavy-weighted tubs of files were necessary to transport evidence used for a debate, and even how you still get college-age students to come visit your house on the weekends. This time, we are going to dedicate the interview to the Tournament of Champions, which is almost entering its 50th year. Last time we covered the creation of the TOC, but I would appreciate it if you would address the question once more. What led to the idea and creation of the tournament?
Well, Zachary, as you know, before I came to Kentucky in 1960, I had spent 9 years teaching English speech and coaching debate at Muskogee Central High School in Oklahoma. Yes, I'm proud to be an Okie from Muskogee. Over the years, even though I left the high school scene, my interest in high school debate never waned. In fact, the very first summer I was here, I started a camp for high school debaters because I think the high school debate is so important. As the years went on, decided I'd like to do a tournament for high school debaters like I had done in Muskogee. But the question was, what type of tournament? Did we need just another regular invitational? And with some assistance from one of my debaters named Jim Flegel, we came up with the idea of the TOC. And the reason was, when I was coaching in high school, when we would arrive at NFL Nationals and Catholic Nationals, there would be a large number of teams there who had had no debate experience since January. They were in schools that debated the first semester and did individual events the second. And they would arrive without any practice except what they could get at home. So we decided the best thing to do was to create a tournament where those people could have practice before they went on to the 2 national tournaments. And we wanted that practice to be with his top-notch debaters, hence champions. And so we decided to start a tournament and call it the Tournament of Champions, inviting what we consider to be champions.
So from what I learned in our last interview, the first Tournament of Champions consisted of 64 teams with 128 students, and now has over 1,000 students. So, did you have an initial goal in mind? And if you did, how long did it take for you to achieve it?
Actually, we anticipated about 64 teams the first tournament. Now keep in mind, at that time there was only one genre of debate, and that was policy. So the problem was, how do we get the champions to come to an unknown tournament? Well, we decided initially that we would invite any team that was qualified for the NFL or Catholic National. In addition, we'd invite those who reached the semifinals at selected tournaments throughout the country. And we would invite state champions and limit it to that. And so really, we didn't have any number that we would say can't come as long as they met that category.
Yeah.
But I had more or less envisioned that that would be the limit, and it was pretty much the limit in policy, and still is for many, many years. The problem initially was, how do we get the champions to come?
Yes.
Well, I was fortunate in that I had kept up with my high school colleagues over the years, the 10 years that I was out of high school debate, and I knew enough of them to call, and I learned where some of the quote-unquote top teams were. And I called the coaches and asked them, if we do this, will you bring them? I believe only one coach turned me down. Now that coach ironically later became one of the winningest high school debate coaches in the country. And we often kid about it. His name is Ted Belch. Ted, I hope you're listening. I often told him that we didn't admit him to the Hall of Fame for two seasons to punish him for not coming to the first tournament. But really that number 64, I think the years I was there, the most we ever had in policy was 76.
And then when you first started the other divisions, did you have the same sort of turnout?
Well, let's see, we added, the second division we added was in the 80s, Lincoln Douglas debate. There was no Lincoln Douglas at the time I started the TOC, but we added that, I believe, in 1982. There was no public forum at the time. I believe we added that in 2001. There was a student congress, but we added that, I think, about 2006. Now, since that time, since I retired, and Dave Arnett is the director, he and his assistants have added events in individual events.
Yes.
Oratory, extemp speaking, dramatic reading, and the like.
Yes, I've seen that. It's gotten a lot larger.
Yeah.
But it's interesting too, because coming from an outsider, someone who doesn't debate, when I heard about the Tournament of Champions and I learned about it, I never learned about it from a frame of mind that policy was the most important. It seems like once they were added, each individual event had its own gravity to it.
Oh, absolutely.
Equal gravity.
From day one, if we added something, we wanted it to be as equally important as any other division, and it is.
Mm-hmm.
They're just different. They're different genres, different goals, but they're all getting to the same end.
Yeah. How has the TOC changed over the years, and what has stayed the same?
Well, first of all, the changes, as I mentioned earlier, the divisions, the genres that have been added is a big change.
Mm-hmm.
But we also changed the method of qualifying in the early 80s. As I mentioned earlier, initially we said state champions, those going to NFL, those reaching the semifinals in certain tournaments. But in the 80s, we decided that many invitationals drew many more champions than others. So we instituted a bid system in which if you reach the octafinals at certain tournaments twice, you could come to the TOC. Certain tournaments were designated as quarterfinal finalists, some as semi, and some as final. And that bid system is still in operation today. There have been no changes in that since. But I would say the biggest changes have been in the number attending, the method of qualifying, and the divisions. Mm-hmm. Almost everything else, I think, is pretty much the same as it was initially.
And of course, technology
Well,
brought about
the technology, of course, has changed what debaters bring with them and how they bring their evidence.
Uh-huh.
That's been a major change, yes.
At this year's 2020 ETOC, we saw the first international school, Taipei American School, with debaters who qualified for policy and with debaters who qualified for public forum. Did you ever imagine that TOC would get international attention? And is this something that you would want to see happen?
I have to admit, I never imagined it would happen. I want to congratulate Dave Arnett for making it happen. I think it's a great idea. No, the best I hoped for or could envision was that all 48 states would be here. And that's a goal that we still have not achieved. Hopefully we will someday.
I believe you will, at this rate. How has your role changed in the management and growth of the TOC?
Dramatically. But before I tell you, I realize that I just left Hawaii and Alaska out of the invitation. They're very much invited, and I hope to see them here someday. As far as my role, it's very minimal. I It's mostly entertaining. I usually preside at the coaches' lounge all the evenings of the TOC. I usually greet people at the awards assembly. Sometimes just hang around and see people that I'm looking forward to seeing. If Dave wants my opinion, of course, on something, he calls and we visit. But pretty much I'm out of it.
Yeah.
But I was in it for 40 years.
Oh, I know you were, and you still have a great time with all the people who come, and I
Yeah.
love going. It's cool
Yeah.
to see everyone. So I've heard about the hospitality suite since I was little, but what is it exactly?
Well, actually, Zachary, it's just a coach's lounge where the
Okay.
coaches come and hang out
Oh.
and talk about the debates they've heard that day.
Okay.
Now, it's mostly just a social event, but in the old days, before decisions were announced after the rounds,
Mm-hmm.
you used to have to wait until the awards assembly to know how your team did. They would come to try to pump people to find out how they voted in different rounds,
Really?
and also find out cases that teams were running. Now, they still do that to some extent. They still talk at those sessions
Mm-hmm.
about what was Team X, what were their arguments on the issue, that kind
Yeah.
of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But it's just pretty much a relaxation period for the coaches after working hard all day.
Yeah, and I think that's what I always come to, and it looks great.
Yeah.
And I think we'll finalize on this last question to wrap it up. Do you have a best moment or memory from the TOC?
Well, I have several. I will say one of them's got to be at the first one when the 64 teams and their coaches arrived, and I realized we had achieved what we were trying to achieve.
Oh, yeah.
And I also want to say that I was thrilled to see that we were able to staff the judging with judges that were called flow sheet judges. A lot of the debaters were frustrated. They would debate, but judges didn't try to follow the arguments carefully and outline them and know what's going on. So
Yeah.
one of the goals of keeping it small was to come up with 32 judges who were capable of listening to the debaters and flowing the arguments and making a decision on that. But the biggest thrill, Zachary, has to be several years later when I realized how much importance coaches and debaters were placing on the TOC. It took,
Yeah.
the coaches were telling me that, but it took me a while to fully realize it. I always knew we could make it into an important tournament, but I never really imagined that it would become a major national tournament in the minds of debaters and coaches.
Yeah.
But once I realized that happened, that had to be a big moment. But it took a while for that to sink in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a huge milestone.
Thank you, Zachary.